Today we're recapping the crime drama 3096 Days. Careful for spoilers ahead. Based on a true story, the movie opens up with Natasha Kampusch skiing down a mountain seemingly alone with her thoughts. She comes to a stop at the bottom of the slope where a group of skiers passes her by, indicating she's in fact not alone. A man stops next to her and their eyes lock for a second. He seems to understand the look she's giving him and takes her to the bathroom where he first checks for other occupants. Seems like nobody's there, so he allows Natasha inside while he waits by the door. Natasha's in her stall when she hears another woman in the bathroom that the man did not initially see. She hurries to get dressed and hesitantly follows her to the sinks. Looking to make sure the man wasn't watching, she approaches the woman and asks for help, telling her name, Natasha Kampusch. Flashback. A younger Natasha is dancing at the bar with her father. Her father seems to be very intoxicated and proposes a toast with his friends. The night goes on, and Natasha is seen wandering outside the bar alone. She tries to tell her father that it's getting late and that her mother will worry, but he laughs it off, promising to leave soon. Natasha wakes up the next day with her mother yelling at her to get up. Her mother tells her to put on the dress that she made for her, but Natasha's convinced that it makes her look fat. Her mother simply tells her to not eat so many biscuits, indicating a non-empathetic relationship between the two. Natasha puts on the dress. Natasha's mother's yelling at her to hurry, insisting that she'll be late to work. Natasha mopes to the table, indicating that she's tired. After staring at her for a second, her mother confronts her about her dad taking her to the bar. She frustratingly claims that the bar is no place for children. She threatens Natasha that if her father takes her home late one more time, she will not be allowed to see him again. Natasha tries to protest, but her mother slaps her in response. Stunned, Natasha silently walks away without a word, leaving for school. Her mother tries to apologize, but Natasha continues to walk away. On the way to school, Natasha's walking alone. Some kids play in a park, but she walks right by them. As she walks down the street, a man steps out of a white van and forces her into the car. Natasha screams for help, but nobody's there to listen. He hits her, knocking her unconscious, and drives away. Another little girl is across the street, stunned at what she just witnessed. The man takes Natasha to his gated home, where he carries her to a small room with only a sink and a toilet. He locks the room behind him and crawls out of the hole in the wall where he's hidden her. Then he closes the wall, as well as the basement that the room seems to be in. Natasha wakes up in the small room, confused about her whereabouts. She tries to call out for help through the door, but there's no one there. She stares at a small vent in the room that gives her air before giving up. The man returns to the room with a mattress, food, and water. She tells him she wants to see her mom, but he ignores her and shuts the door on her. Natasha tries screaming for help through the vent in the room, but nobody could hear her. Eventually, it gets late, and she gets ready for bed. The light turns off, and she feels through the dark, calling for her mom. It's day 3, and the man is pondering what he's done. He goes about his day like he hadn't kidnapped a little girl. The man, Wolfgang, reads a book to Natasha about the princess and the pea. She stays in her corner, eating cookies and listening to the story. When the story ends, he plugs in a nightlight and tries to leave, but Natasha stops him. She asks for a goodnight kiss, just like her mother used to give her. He pauses for a second and obliges, kissing her goodnight. Elsewhere, Natasha's mother and grandmother are watching the news about their missing child. The news reporter claims that Natasha's mother has lost all hope, to which she protests. The two sit anxiously together, waiting to get word about their missing little girl. In the basement, Natasha's walking back and forth endlessly, trying to cope with her boredom. She loses track of time and wonders what day it is before the lights shut off, indicating it's time for bed. Wolfgang's mother walks around his kitchen, listing off supplies that should feed him for the week. She tries to give him suggestions as to what he should make, but he just impishly tries to joke around with her. She doesn't catch on to his bad jokes, and the two share an awkward exchange, indicating that his relationship with his mother is similar to Natasha and hers. Later that night, the two watch the news together. It's about Natasha's disappearance and how she was likely taken on her route to school. His mother makes a callous remark about how she's likely being abused. He remarks that perhaps the kidnapper is just crazy. One day, Wolfgang is shampooing Natasha's hair when she gives him a letter to send out to her parents, and he takes it. She then seems to use too much shampoo for his liking because he claims that it's too expensive. In response, she suggests to just let her go. The two get into a back and forth argument that nobody wants her and that her parents aren't paying the ransom for her back. The argument escalates to the point that he's dunking her head in water mercilessly. He yells at her that he can't stand tears and abruptly leaves the room, leaving her wet and crying to clean up the mess herself. One evening, Wolfgang's in the garden enjoying beverages with his mother and grandmother when the police come knocking. They ask to see his van, and Wolfgang sheepishly complies. He asks them if this is about the missing girl, and they say yes. They have looked at a number of similar white vans to no avail. Wolfgang's van is now filled with tools and work equipment, as he claims that he used to work in telecommunications. Wolfgang continues to make small talk with the officers as one of them steps over to the secret basement where he keeps Natasha. The two asks where he was on the date of Natasha's disappearance, and he claims that he was home alone. They continue to press him with questions. He answers but quickly changes the subject, offering them beverages. They decline and insist that they must go. Natasha dreams about better and happier times with her parents. She'd dress up as her parents lovingly laughed and took pictures of her. She's woken up by Wolfgang with breakfast. She requests a clock so that she can get a sense of time again. He agrees. He also installs an intercom that would allow him to speak with her while he's upstairs. While he's installing new stuff, she asks him about the letter she gave him. She wonders if he sent it out like she requested, to which he lies and tells her yes. Later, he rips up the letter. It's day 183. Out of boredom, she pretends to teach her old clothes like they're in school. She also draws on the walls and pretends to interview her clothes when she's interrupted by Wolfgang on the intercom. He asks her if she brushed her teeth and rinsed off her plate. She lies and tells him yes. He insists that she has to obey him and repeat the words "obey me" over and over on the intercom. Later, when he comes down with food for her, she tries to fool him with a fake injury. He doesn't buy it, and he tells her that if she's going to play with her food, she won't get any because she's too fat anyway. She tries to fight him, but he lifts her up to the vent that she's been yelling at. He tells her that it leads to the roof and that nobody would be able to hear her through it. He also showed her the vault door that he's built to keep her in, telling her that there's no way out. She tries to make a run for it, but he quickly stops her and throws her back into the room, crushing her hopes. Natasha seemed to accept her fate and lives her days out reading to her makeshift dolls and lounging about. It's been 4 days since she last ate, and she begs Wolfgang for food. She tries to be cute and beg for food, but snaps and angrily pounds on the intercom saying she'll eat anything. On the other side, Wolfgang is listening to her plea and simply responds with the words, "Obey me," over and over again. 4 years later, Wolfgang still continues to utter the same words, "Obey me," over the intercom. Natasha wakes up from her nap and begs him for food. He starves her often, and this time it's been 3 days since she last ate, and she's become extremely malnourished. She begs him, but he doesn't care. To distract her from her hunger, she digs through the trash and reads. Her room's a lot more crowded now, with a bunk bed and a small heater and a table in the corner. She's running out of space. Day 1695. She's reading a book when her period begins. Wolfgang comes in asking her to sew some of his clothes, but doesn't react well when he finds out that her period has begun. He's disgusted and tells her to clean it up, but she cannot with just the stuff that she has in the room. She asks him to use the shower upstairs, and he reluctantly agrees. When she comes out of her room for the first time, she's in awe at the sunlight shining into the basement. He tells her not to try anything, because he's lined the windows and doors with explosives if she tries anything. Seeing everything for the first time slightly overwhelms her, but she promises to do as she's told. She's taken to the bathroom, where she must shower with him watching. One day, Wolfgang's mom is taking care of him again. She loads his dishwasher and tells him to do the dishes. He agrees and walks her out, but she stops at the door and asks him if he has a girlfriend. Confused, he denies any relationship. She pulls a single blonde hair from his shirt and tells him that Grandma was beginning to worry that he was gay. A little frazzled, he assures her that he's straight. Later, he takes Natasha upstairs to shave her head. She cries sadly, and the two hang out upstairs in the kitchen together. Day 1837. It's Christmas now, and Natasha has a radio in her room to listen to. She has a tree and makeshift decorations. She listens to music and wraps a present. Wolfgang comes down with food, a camera, and a gift for her. It's a Walkman so that she can listen to music in the dark, as well as a bunch of books for her to read. She tries to give him a hug, but he protests and tells her to stop. In light of the holidays, she asks him if she could know where her family is. This upsets him, and he tells her that he is her family now. Because of this, he gives her a completely new name. She'll now be called Bibi, and for the first time, he introduces himself to her as Wolfgang. Elsewhere, Natasha's mother and grandmother are together for the holidays. Her grandmother still gets her a gift every Christmas, and the two wonder if Natasha will like the pink sweater. Her mother breaks out into tears, reflecting on the day Natasha was kidnapped. Natasha and Wolfgang are doing construction on his house and tear down a wall for a new room. When she suggests that it's for his girlfriend, he angrily hits a bag of cement and covers her in dust. But it doesn't faze her. He tells her that she's sleeping with him tonight. That night, he zip ties their hands together, and the two share the same bed. As life goes on, Wolfgang seems to grow more comfortable with her. He goes to the convenience store and begins buying her tampons as well as condoms for himself. Later, he's at a club with his friends when he begins to dance with a girl, and while initially being into it, he grows uncomfortable and leaves. Later that night, he takes advantage of Natasha and forces himself on her. Afterwards, she asks him to go to the garden, and he allows it. After a short time in the garden, he forces her back into her room, frustrated with himself. Day 2029. Natasha's hair has grown out, and Wolfgang has her doing chores like cooking for him. But she's not doing it to his satisfaction, and takes out his frustration on her by hitting her and refusing her food. A starving Natasha desperately tries to eat some food out of desperation, but Wolfgang stops her and forces her to spit it out. In the following days, he grows crueler and plays sick tricks on her, like locking her in a dark hole. Wolfgang eventually takes her out to run errands with him. He lies to her and tells her that he has a gun and will kill anybody if she tries anything. While out in public for the first time in years, Natasha stares at the normal people living their life, unaware of her situation. While in a store, there's a brief moment that he leaves her alone, but she doesn't run. The words "obey me" echo through her head, and she can't bring herself to ask for help. Day 2175. The room him and Natasha have been working on has finally been complete. Despite being the one doing most of the work, she acts surprised anyway when he shows it to her. His mom also loves the room, and the two enjoy drinks at his brand new bar in the garden. In her room, Natasha's listening to the radio when the announcer talks about how it's been 6 years since her disappearance. Wolfgang takes her to her new room and calls it the Aphrodite Suite. He makes her put on lingerie, claiming it's their wedding day. She asks him why he chose her, and he tells her about the time they locked eyes at a convenience store when she was very young. He tells her about how he slowly built the secret room from scratch all for her, and then proceeds to get intimate with her. Later, Natasha starts a fire in her room, hoping to commit suicide. But the smoke is too much for her to handle, and she puts it out. She tries to clean up the room to cover up the smell of the smoke, but it doesn't work. He then beats her out of anger, telling her that she's not allowed to kill herself. Her response is that if she's not allowed to leave, one of them must die. She later writes down how he beat her on some toilet paper and puts it in a box. Cut to the scene from the beginning of the movie. Wolfgang is trying to teach her to ski, but her legs are too weak to keep her balance. Similar to the beginning of the movie, he stands guard at the door, and she approaches a woman for help. Unfortunately, the woman doesn't speak English and walks away unaware of the situation. Later, Wolfgang asks her about it, and she lies, telling him nothing happened. He doesn't believe her and proceeds to hit her. She adds the beating to her box of records that is now full of papers from the times he hit her. Day 2908. It's Natasha's 18th birthday. He gets her a cake in the shape of a number 18, as well as a dress that she puts on right away. The two of them dance to some music while Wolfgang tries to teach her. One day, the two are working on the garden together, and the neighbor sees them over a hedge. They exchange an awkward greeting, but nothing comes out of it. The two have lunch together, and unlike before, she manages to do everything without upsetting him. The two have begun to settle down with one another. One day, Natasha is tasked with cleaning the van, and the two of them work together to clean the van. While she vacuums the inside, she takes a note of the gate being open. Wolfgang has dropped his guard with her and leaves her alone to take a phone call. She uses the opportunity to make a run for it. Wolfgang comes back, but he's too late. She's gone. After running for help, she finds an older lady working on her garden and begs for help. It's day 3096, and the police come by to finally take her home. Wolfgang commits suicide by laying down in front of a train, and Natasha sees her parents again for the first time since she was taken and hugs them emotionally. The paparazzi's outside, waiting for her triumphant return to the world.